Welcome back. So, as you've just read, this is a case concerning a young Sri Lankan immigrant to Japan. She went there initially to study a language course, but while she was there, she got into a rather abusive relationship. Due to this abusive partner, her attendance at her language school started to drop, causing the language school to revoke her visa. I guess the visa was dependent on her regular attendance at the course. Around the same time, as I mentioned in part one, the political and economic instability back in her home country of Sri Lanka was getting out of control. So she didn't feel like going back home at this time, despite the fact she'd lost her visa, was a viable option. So she ended up staying with the abusive boyfriend. Unfortunately, rather than helping her deal with her abusive home situation in Japan, the Japanese police simply arrested her for overstaying her visa. So she got put straight into a detention center. This, I'm sure you can imagine, was a pretty stressful experience, being worried about her family back home, recovering or trying to recover from an abusive situation, realizing you're stuck in a detention center. Her health began to suffer. She got sicker and sicker over time and weaker. But every time she asked for medical attention, she tried to tell them that she was sick, she was refused medical care. They even accused her of faking illness. After a number of weeks in this deteriorating state, she died in the detention center. They just let her die. So, after her death, they realized she wasn't faking it, and then they were trying to scrabble around and deal with the consequences. But so far, nobody has been punished. Nobody has taken any responsibility for her death. And so activists, including Japanese people, Sri Lankan people, they're trying to put pressure on the system in Japan to do something, to investigate, to see what they can do to resolve and bring justice for Wishma. Why do you think nobody has been punished for her death?
I think it's a very sad case, but very obvious case of not caring about people who are outside of your group. If this were a person of whatever country, in this case Japan, if this were a Japanese person basically starved to death with poor health in a facility, things would be different. Absolutely. But this was a poor Sri Lankan criminal seen as the lowest of the low and having apparently no human rights at that point. And that is part of the issue, I think. And the reason why no one has taken any flack for this or been punished is because no one wants to punish someone for what they see as something that's not that important
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah.
I feel like this would probably be a similar situation, or I've read about similar situations in Australia, in the UK, even in America. And as far as I know, punishment does not come. Yeah, justice does not come. They are considered not important enough for the police to pay attention to.
I don't know what else to say. It's just it happens in every sort of powerful country. There are people who are going to be ignored to the point of showing that they have no human rights anymore.
Yeah. And you're right, we don't put enough attention on it. You know, I'm glad there are groups out there, people campaigning for justice, trying to shine a light on this issue, trying to make people pay attention and see it as important. I'm glad they're doing that.
Yeah.
So, also there was perhaps the first sort of, I think, failing by the system was the fact that there were two foreigners, the Sri Lankan girl and her abusive boyfriend, and they, when she tried to get help to defend herself against this abusive boyfriend, the police were very reluctant to get involved. And then she ended up getting arrested for overstaying her visa. Do you think in your country, the police would be able to help effectively when it's two foreigners?
It's going to be a case by case. I think there would definitely be a intervention, and I think for the American police there would be a high chance of them arresting the boyfriend in this case as well. However, there would also be a high chance of her getting arrested for overstaying the visa. So I think, you know, they would not be reluctant. That is a key point of American police. I think they're not very reluctant to intervene, which can be a great thing for some situations and quite terrible for others. But in this case, I think both parties would be arrested.
Well, maybe a little bit fairer, at least.
Yeah.
And this bit reminds me, there was a famous case where, and I think she wasn't an immigrant, her parents were immigrants, and but she was British born, and she kept going to the police saying it was her parents were abusing her and threatening to kill her if she didn't marry the guy that they wanted her to marry. But the police she gave statements, there's videos of her telling the police about what her family are threatening, and they keep sending her home saying, no, it's going to be all right, you know, don't worry about it. And then they killed her. And so we've changed the law a lot, I think, since then, because many accusations were of police negligence were made and not taking it seriously enough because they're immigrants, they're foreigners. And so I hope since then the situation has got better.
And I feel like a lot of countries have ignored domestic issues for a long time. Police have been like, oh, that's your issue. That's a domestic thing. That's in this household. We're not going to touch it. But I'm hoping that definitely changes a lot more and says, hey, no. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you are hurting someone else's rights, the police should be defending the person who is being hurt, even if it is a home.
Yeah. If you can't ask the police to protect you, who can you ask?
In this girl's case, no one. And in that case, no one.
So, as we consider how to get restitution for Wishma and the others, you guys go check out the vocabulary. And we'll see you in the next one.
Misnomer.
Misnomer.
Restitution.
Restitution.
Falter.
Falter.
Bleak.
Bleak.
Get at.
Get at.